Welcome to Effortless Being, where it takes no effort just to be. I have a guest with me today, David Farmer. What's up, David?
Hey Rob, how you doing, man?
Good to see you. This is great being together. It's like I feel like you're like my mirror. Like I'm seeing myself and you. Like we're just like
Yeah, yeah.
mirroring each other.
It's yeah, exactly. It's so funny. I think we first got in touch 4 years ago, over 4 years ago now. Can you believe that?
Wow, it's been that long.
It has, yeah. And it's just been great. We've sort of come in and out of each other's consciousness over that time, and it's just amazing to see the changes. A lot of change has been going on.
I know. Well, for our audience, tell them how we came in contact.
Yeah, it was through our mutual friend David, wasn't it? David Bingham.
Yes.
And because I think you and I recognized we had quite a lot of in common from the outset, didn't we? Because even though we were in different countries, obviously at the time, you were in the States and I was in Japan at the time.
Right.
And but yeah, we both recognized our true nature within like a few weeks of one another, I think. But
Yes.
interestingly, it was the trigger was the exact same phrase from David, wasn't it? That your infinite consciousness having a human experience.
Yeah. Because when he had said that in The Greatest Secret, you're the infinite being, having a human experience, everything clicked for me there. Because previous to that, I just thought I was like, this Rob character with all these limitations, and I thought it was like this separate person. But when he had said that, it all fell into place, so to speak.
Yeah, it was strange. I've told this story before a couple of times, but I was sitting at home in my apartment in Yokohama and just watching, flicking through Netflix and or wherever it was, and or YouTube. It was the conscious TV interviews I think he had done, and I was just deciding what I wanted to eat for watch when I was having my dinner that night, and stuck it on one of these conscious TV interviews, and I heard that phrase,
Yeah.
and he said, the truth is very simple, and yeah, everything just sort of went, whoop, you know, and yeah, it was very well, it's difficult. You can't really describe it because it's not an experience at all, is it?
No, it's not an experience. And sometimes like when I'm having calls with people, like with seekers and stuff like that, a lot of them, get caught up. I think they keep seeking because they're expecting it to be an experience, or maybe
Yeah.
they have a spiritual experience and they're trying to get back to there. So then that keeps that loop of seeking going. Have you seen that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and people constantly come with this sort of oh, yeah, I need this, or there's a lot of comparison. So of course, when you're seeking, um, you're doing that through whether it's through books or whether it's through YouTube videos or actually going and meeting teachers and things like that. And there's a lot of comparison that goes on, like, oh, they're like this and I'm not, and then there's this continual. It's like this sort of this loop. But of course, the problem is that the seeking implies a seeker.
Right.
So it's that constantly sort of missing that, is like sort of stepping off your front doorstep into the world all the time. You just keep stepping over that front doorstep all the time. If you just stayed where you were,
Yeah,
you
right.
realize you're already home.
Yeah, you are already home. That's why I try to tell people it's already here. It's really
Yeah,
simple. You're already here. It's just that the seeking takes you out of it when you start looking for something. There's nothing to look for. Everything is already whole and complete right
that's
here,
right.
right now.
That's right. That's right. It implies a seeker, and so that um, reinforces
Yeah.
the idea of being separate right there from the get-go.
Yeah.
Like so,
Right out of the gates. Yeah.
and you're off, yeah, right out of
You're off and
the,
running.
yeah, you're off and running, and sometimes for 40, 50 years for people.
It's a long
Um,
time. And like some people say to me, like I did, Awareness Explorers had interviewed me. I don't know if you knew that or not, but they did.
I saw that. I haven't had a
Okay.
chance to look at it yet, but I saw that a
Yeah,
couple of
yeah, they were
moments.
thanking you. Said thank you for telling Robert, sending Robert over. It was a good interview. I like those guys. They're really, really good guys over
Yeah,
there.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really good. But even, and he was saying on the call, like he's been like he meditated for like a long time too. And a lot of people they just keep, meditating, or they think it's going to come about, that way and different ways. What, just so my audience knows, what had gotten you into seeking? Like, why did you even start seeking in the first place?
Yeah, it was really, for a lot of people, it's often traumatic events, that brings about this either seeking or indeed like the recognition of their true nature in the first place. Like
Yeah.
it can be a trauma, it can be, a car accident, it can be going through being incarcerated, it could be whatever it could be, some kind of shock often brings about that recognition. Um, but maybe to a lesser degree, that kind of traumatic events can often spark you asking these, what, why, where questions like, why am I here? What's the point? How is this all possible? All that kind of stuff.
Right.
So for me, it was the death of my father. So in 2003, I moved to Japan
Hmm.
to live. In 2006, my dad passed away in Scotland, here where I am now. Um, so I had to fly back for that and deal with all of that, and then went back to Japan by myself to resume my life over there. And that's where the seeking started. I was like, okay, what's the point of all this? You know, and yeah, so I was your sort of I suppose stereotypical seeker for about 15 years or so. And my particular flavor was I did traditional Japanese archery, sometimes called Zen archery. Um, I did that for two reasons. One, because archery was something I used to do with my dad when I was younger, so there was
Okay.
that connection.
Nice.
So I guess I still kind of wanted to be closer to him.
Oh, that's great.
But the other side of it was Japanese archery is very, very like Zen. It's very peaceful. And there was a lot of discipline in it, which I felt I needed at that time because I was starting to go around the route of the too much of this,
Right.
every bit too much of the alcohol, and that continued for a long time as well.
Mhm.
So the discipline aspect I wanted as well. But yeah, there's a very meditative quality, Zen quality to Japanese archery. So I did that, and I supplemented it with Zen meditation, which I did pretty much by myself, and then reading, lots and lots of reading. So I used to jump into a big bookstore in Tokyo, had a big English book section, and I used to read all the spiritual classics. So
That's great.
that's kind of my story. And then there was, for about 15 years or so, that's how it played out, that style of seeking.
Wow. Yeah. So you were in Japan. I'm trying to like remember because when we were talking, because we would talk to each other, but I remember you being in Japan and
Mm,
then you moved back to Scotland, right? Is
correct.
that
Yeah.
how it all went? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was funny because that was after the self-realization because I'd been in Japan from 2006 and then 2021, February, I popped on David's video and the old whoop happened. And then, so I was still in Japan at that point, February 2021. And that's where we got in touch, I think probably about a month or so after that. I imagine
Yeah.
about
It was right after
something
that. Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Because David was like, hey, get in touch with David Farmer. He just, learned his,
Yeah.
he had his true nature and you guys would be good. And together he thought. And so then he put us in touch to, go through the whatever you want to call integration. Like, what would you say to people about integration or, after what is this, by the way? You keep going like this. How would you I know what you're saying, but
Yeah.
for the audience, like describe that.
Oh, that is
I'm sure I'm
just,
going to get comments like, what is he saying? What does he mean?
what are they talking about? What's he
Yeah,
trying
right.
to gesture? Because it's really like to try and put it in words, it's like the background becomes the foreground
Okay.
becomes the background. So if you're constantly up until that point of self-realization, you believe yourself to be a separate person, you believe it to be this separate self, and then there's this that then becomes the background,
Mhm.
and your true nature, that which is really we can't describe in words, that becomes the foreground. So that's when the only way. That's why I can't. Because you can't describe it in words. I just keep doing
Yeah,
this all
yeah,
the time
yeah, you
because
just,
you know what I mean.
yeah, I do. It resonates. Yeah. I was just
Right.
thinking for the audience, like, I don't know how do you put that into words? Like, because the
Yeah,
mind
but
always wants to understand it. That's what it is. The mind always comes in and wants to understand what this is.
yeah, and that's all. And that's part of the integration you talked about just there. Like,
Yeah.
so for me, I know everybody's story's different. But for me, like about a month after self-realization, I was just blissed out,
I remember.
staring at the clouds. I think you were the same, driving
Yeah, I was
around.
in the
Remember,
backyard, like watching the trees, being in nature.
driving around in your car, just blissed out all the time. I remember.
Oh yeah,
Um,
cranking the twos, just. "La."
Yeah. And then, but like you say, like the mind comes in and then just starts to want to kind of make sense of it all. But that's just part of the integration, and that you realize that it can't, and it just comes in out of habit,
Hmm.
um, and sucks your energy. Really, it's all
Yeah.
it does. So as soon as you plug into that, merry-go-round, then you're of thoughts, and then the emotion and all that kind of stuff. You plug into that, it zaps your energy. So a lot of this integration, if you like, is just recognizing that, yeah, that's part of the human experience.
Mhm.
Nothing wrong with that. Thoughts come
Right.
and go like the clouds in the sky,
Yeah.
but you don't have to identify and engage with them all the time. You can just
Right.
sit back and chill as effortless be. So
Effortless speed.
there's sort of an unwinding of that habit, I think, is integration, but it's just part of the story.
Yeah, it is another story. Say something about thoughts and emotions. I know I've listened to some of the stuff on your channel and stuff like that, and you do have a clear way of explaining like thoughts and emotions. Maybe say something about, because you do have a background, just so the audience knows. You maybe tell them what you're doing now, for your job or your work and that kind of stuff, and how that relates to this.
Yeah, it's interesting how life stories sort of change, and when we when we really become aligned with our true nature, and you let go of any kind of expectations of what life should be like, and then you end up, things develop in wonderful ways that you never expected. And so for me, just to go back to the Japan thing for a brief second, so I moved back to Scotland from Japan after
Right.
almost 20 years, in August of 2021.
Right.
Uh, so just a few months later,
Yeah.
after the realization, I was like, right, that's enough of that, and moved back to Scotland. Um, and yeah, so the first couple of years back here were interesting. So the first year I took a year off, stayed with my mom for a while, which was interesting.
Yeah. How'd that go?
At the age of 45, I think
Yeah, you
once
back my mom.
yeah, once you leave the nest, I don't think you're really distant. You're supposed to return, but yeah.
That's funny. Great. I love it.
But yeah, no, it was fine, and
Yeah.
it was interesting because you start to realize, or in my case, I start to realize why that was necessary, because there's a lot of that relationship thing with my mom, with my sister, that needed to be worked out, that just perhaps I might have tried to escape from 20 years earlier by
Ah, I
moving to
see.
Japan. So it's really interesting. So there's a sort of for me, and there's a sort of this sort of mental health element started to creep in.
Hmm.
And then obviously I needed a job because I didn't have a job when I came back. So I was looking for a job, and of course the mind then wants to create exactly the right job that it thinks you should have now because
Yeah.
you're
It loves doing
realized.
that.
So because you're self-realized, you ought to have a certain type of job.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely
So
mind right there.
yeah, so there's a lot of that,
Yeah.
and a lot of quite, it was frustration, and again, this is part of this integration that you talked about. And it got to the point where I was actually at the stage of accepting a job to clean public toilets in a village not far from here.
Mm.
And I was like, I'm going to do this. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm.
And that was like the final sort of dissolution, if you like, of this egoic sense of gravitas, that there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing those type of jobs either. We're all one. It's all the same. And then the moment that sort of epiphany occurred, if you like, then about a week later, there was a job advert for a recovery coach at a mental health charity popped up.
Oh, neat.
And I just, it's called SAMH, Scottish Action for Mental Health. So quite a big charity here in Scotland. And yeah, I applied for the job, and I got it like a couple of weeks later. So
Nice.
that was almost 2 years ago. So now I work in mental health, and day to day I care for people that suffer from schizophrenia, bipolar, ADHD,
Mhm.
alcohol addictions, you name it, this type of thing. So, yeah, and it's been absolutely wonderful 2 years. It's been, I'm not going to say it's not challenging because
Mhm.
there's times when you come home from work and you just burst into tears. It's quite
Mhm.
a challenging
I
job.
can imagine emotionally, right? Yeah.
It's very draining. It can be
Yeah.
very draining. It's can be quite an energy exchange. If you go into work and you look at your schedule some days, you think, oh, it's not too bad. I've got this support, that support, and then you go to support a
Yeah.
person and they've self-harmed, or they tell
Wow.
you, or they tell you they want to take their life today, and then
Mhm.
you have to, help them with that, work through that, counsel that. So it can be very, very challenging, and as you say, draining.
Mhm.
The emotional um, energy exchange is quite heavy at times, but it's so rewarding.
I bet.
It's really, really rewarding job, and it's interesting that how you can integrate the sort of the non-dual teaching, if you like, or the effortless being into that, and slowly, slowly that sort of integration of these two things has sort of started to take place. So yeah, if you just let go and let things take their natural courses, it's can be wonderful where you end up.
Yes, that's beautiful. What would you say, like people, you said non-duality, effortless being, maybe say something about that, just for the listeners that, know what that is, like how you see it.
Yeah. Well, there's no such thing as duality. That's the first thing. And people believe that there's a world out there and a person here looking at a world out there. Um, but really, that's not the case at all. And if you just prise under the surface even slightly, you can find that there's no um, difference, no separation between anything. Um, Even if you want to start on like a physical level, if you like, let's start with the sort of if you were to call everything physical, the physical body, like the physical body is dependent on so many different things. It's like
Mhm.
a flower in the garden. It's dependent on the sunlight, it's dependent on the soil conditions, dependent on the water. So the flower does not live independently of that. So that train of thought, well, if the flower is dependent on the sunlight, the flower is also the sunlight. The flower is also the water, is also the ground. And you take that example and just go whoosh, and you realize the entire universe is one thing, is one operating organism, if you like. Actually, you mentioned Brian earlier. After I did an interview with him a few months back, he quoted Carl Sagan to me. And he said there's a very famous quote by Carl Sagan, which is, "If you want to make apple pie, first you have to create the entire universe." So,
Great.
and I was like, "Yeah, that's
Good.
right. Everything from that is interconnected, even from that point of view." But you know, we actually sense this interconnectedness all the time. We're constantly, and that's why we feel that the moments where we are completely in alignment with that are the most peaceful. And we've had that. All of us have had those in our life. Like
Sure. Yeah.
you can look back at your life story and think, okay, what are the most peaceful, memorable moments? They're the moments where you were not thinking about the future nor regretting the past.
Mhm.
You were completely present and you remember those. And those are little glimpses into our true nature. But that pool of this believing to be separate, that pool of the society, if you like, because you look around and everybody believes they're separate, so you think you're separate too. But for many, myself included, there's always this niggling little kind of, wow, that doesn't seem to make sense. That doesn't feel right.
Right.
It doesn't feel right. And then you start to trust that doesn't feel right.
Sure.
And you start to understand that everything is those were little glimpses into what you really are, and you start to follow that, you know,
Yes.
and then that's really the start of seeking for a lot of people. And so then we realize, that our true nature is actually just this effortless flow of nature.
Mm,
It's going on by itself. And suffering is when we are going against that. You
yes.
know, any kind of friction, any kind of pushing and pulling life around is
Mhm.
suffering itself. So we start to realize that, well, if I don't push and pull life around, if I just remain as I am, then everything goes fairly smoothly by itself. There's no need to really do anything. Even thoughts come and go by themselves.
So, David, is there a doer here? Is there a doer here?
You want to give me a yes or a no?
Or is
So,
just everything happening automatically? What's going on here? Like, if somebody's like looking at reality right now, you know, what do you say? Give us a clear picture of reality.
yeah, I mean, when you go into it, we really can't say a word about reality. This is
Right.
the thing
Yeah.
and this is the ultimate reality is that we really can't say a word about it.
Hmm.
Any kind of say, yes, there is a doer, no, there isn't, you automatically fall into some
Great.
kind
Yeah.
of
You saw
sneaky,
right through
sneaky,
that.
sneaky trap, sneaky trap. I didn't know you were going to set traps for me in this interview.
It just came through. There's no doer here like doing it. I don't know. It's just effortless being, right? Just
Even the
effortlessly flowed through.
even the traps effortlessly appears.
Yeah. That's part of the whole,
Yeah.
right? That's part of the whole.
Yeah, it's true. And that's part of the fun, like
It
it's
is. It makes it fun. It doesn't take like the seriousness out of it. It's more like light. Don't you feel
yeah,
like I don't know, I just feel like it's more like lighthearted fun. It's almost like there's this character Rob like going
yeah.
around and doing its thing and
Well, I
it
mean,
takes the seriousness out of it, so to speak. I don't know.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what's seen here. You know what I
yeah, absolutely. It's like the salt and pepper of it, isn't it?
mean?
Like it's you just because everybody just thinks that the nature of reality that when you recognize your true nature, then you're going to be sort of
Blissed out.
peaceful
Yeah.
and blissed out all the
Yeah.
time and just gonna you float around on a cloud and you never have yeah, right. Okay,
Yeah.
that might last for 5 minutes. Then you go to work and
Yeah.
see how
Time to go to work.
see how long that lasts. So, but like a way I've been sort of describing it recently, because somebody asked me this question recently, like, why am I not peaceful all the time? And I was like, well, would you really want to be? Because
Right.
it would just like if things were just blissed out the entire time,
Mhm.
like you would miss all the spice of life. Like I said, salt and pepper there, but it's just this, the humor, the interactions, the miscommunications, the all this kind of stuff. It's like that's just the spice of it. And
Yeah.
all that stuff goes on, regardless of whether recognize your true nature or not. Even though you recognize your true nature, all that stuff still goes on,
Mhm.
you know? It's
Yep.
like so the analogy I gave this person was it's a I think we've all heard the analogy of the wave in the ocean.
Yeah.
But there's different ways you can tweak that analogy depending on what you want to talk about. So obviously the famous one, the wave in the ocean, is that you're not the wave, you're the ocean. The
Right.
wave believes it's separate, but it's actually part of the ocean. It's all water. So that's that one. But knowing your true nature, knowing that you're the ocean, you're the water, it doesn't mean you stop being a wave. And it doesn't mean that waves are going up and down and constantly in movement, constantly in flux. There's big waves, little waves, stormy waves, just
Mhm.
ripples. And all of that is continually going on anyway. Regardless of whether you think about it or not, and so that's part of the human experience. And so the key is that we can then, once we've recognized our true nature, we can let go and let all that happen. But everything is going on anyway. There's flux and flow, and
It
everybody,
always was, right? It was always
yeah,
going on.
it was always going on.
It's
It's
almost like
just
a case of mistaken identity. Like you
yeah,
identify. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Like you believe yourself to be the person, so you take everything seriously.
Yeah.
And then, but when you recognize your true nature, you just allow everything to go and you see everything going on.
No resistance.
There's no resistance. And that going on also means, getting a bit angry when somebody cuts you off in traffic and, you have to hoot your horn or whatever it is, like
Part of the
there's
human experience still, right? You
it's
still
just
have
part
you
of the
still
human
having the human
experience.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's just all part of the experience. It's all part of this expression. And the thing is that we identify as the as not as the person, but we know ourselves to be, that which is the source of everything. So we just allow all that to go on by itself. Like you say, it always was. It's just that
Always was.
mistaken
Yeah.
identity. Yeah,
How
yeah.
about spiritual bypassing, like feelings and emotions? Some people say like you should
Mm,
welcome the emotions, you should welcome the feelings. Some say, there's different ways of looking at that. How do
mm.
you see it?
Well, what is known as a direct path, which is going directly to your true nature. Um, a lot of people criticize that as spiritual bypassing, going
Mhm.
straight to the recognition of your true nature. And it absolutely is spiritual bypassing.
Let's get that out of the way.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is spiritual bypassing. However, that doesn't mean that you don't still have to work through all the crap that was within you, all your thoughts and emotions and
Conditioning
subconscious
and all that. Yeah.
patterns,
Beliefs
your
and conditioning.
conditioning,
Yeah.
all of that. So it doesn't mean that you don't have to deal with that. However, the difference is that it's not a case of you having to deal with it. It's that it is dealt with automatically,
Yes.
dealt with by itself. Um, so, and the other way of welcoming it, I think you mentioned and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff,
Yeah.
all that stuff reinforces the idea of being separate.
Agree. Yeah.
And therefore that separate sense of separation, that sense of being a separate self that is not going to get liberation unless they work through all their traumas and all those kind of things. That perpetuates the sense of self. And so when we come directly to our true nature, we point and point and point to our true nature, and when that's recognized, then all that conditioning is still there within this human expression. Um, and it works itself out therefore naturally after that. And we allow it to do so. That's not to say it's not difficult for people who have maybe had a lot of trauma in their life or um, to varying degrees. It's not to say that those things are not hard at the time. And it comes back to the analogy of the wave. There are big waves and little waves. Um, but the difference is that we can constantly come back to this knowing of our true nature, and we allow everything to come up, and it's seen. And when it's seen, then it can disperse.
Mm.
We're not trying not to look at it. We're not, because that's what we've been doing before. We allow it to come up. We see it. Oh yeah, that's that thought. There's that subconscious pattern again. There's that bit of conditioning again, and then it comes up, and you just, oh yeah, okay, and you let it go. Let it go. It just happens by itself automatically.
You're so clear. That's why I love talking to you. You're very clear on this, and I'm happy to hear that you have a website and you've been talking about this with people, and that's a perfect job for you. What you're doing. And I remember when I did my first interview with Luciana over at Nothing Media. Um, David asked me to do that interview after he had done it, and he was saying, how about David? We're gonna get David Farmer to do it. I remember at first you were a little reluctant to do it. I was like, you can do this. You remember that?
I do. I remember that. I remember you. I remember. I think I mailed you or something. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so tired. I don't want to do this." And you said, "Oh, don't worry. You're the infinite being. There's no such thing as tired. Just do
Yeah.
it."
And you went and did it. It was a beautiful interview.
It was fun. I loved it. I think I was so raw. I sometimes look back at that
I know,
interview.
isn't it fun to look back at it?
I was so raw. It was just, I was still totally like blissed out and things. So it's nice to kind of, 4 years later, after there's been a sort of a little bit of a settling down, to to look back at that and just go, wow, yeah, that's what it it was fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, when I was on Awakening Explorers, there I was telling them the story how I the first interview I did was with Luciana on Nothing Media. And so then I went back, and after the interview, I just went back just to look at it. And I watched the interview again. I was like, wow, that was so different. Like I even looked different. And like you said, it's right after you're blissed out. And I'm like, it was
Yeah.
all that. And they were Nothing Media was big into like radical non-duality, that kind of thing. Tony Parsons, no, there's no one here, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just recently, so I had saw that. So I went online. I was looking for Luciana. I was like, well, I didn't see her over there at Nothing Media anymore.
Mhm.
So she had her own YouTube channel, Luciana and Lubo. So I was like, who's Lubo? Who's Luciana? So then I emailed them and I said, let's do an interview and talk. So I have an interview with Luciana. I just did one with her
Oh,
and
nice.
Lubo last week. You'll have to check it out. But as you can see what she's been up to. So she's in south of France. They even they talk about non-duality and that kind of thing. And they have people that come and actually live with them down there in south of France. You could actually go down there and stay, and they do like retreats and that kind of thing. It was pretty neat just, catching up and seeing what they were up to.
Yeah, it's nice. I'm glad they're doing well. It was I can't remember where she was. She seems to travel around a bit. I can't remember where she was. I think she was in Greece or someplace where
Yeah,
she
yeah, like,
interviewed.
yeah. But yeah, she was great to talk to. But yeah, the interview was good, and it was nice, hearing from them and just thinking back to that many years ago that happened, and just seeing, where everybody's at. Maybe say something about radical non-duality, just so for our listeners understand what that's all about. What would you,
Yeah,
do
I
you have
think
anything
it's
to say about that?
yeah, I think it's just another cul-de-sac, isn't it? If
Yeah.
you're just this whole sort of well, there's nothing, there's no I mean, yeah, to a certain extent, yeah, there is no person. Of course, we know that, but that kind of I used to call it. I think I called it before the wrecking ball approach.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you saying
So
that.
it's like, boof, there's nothing at all.
Yeah.
Boof, there's nothing at all. No, there's nothing. Boof,
Yeah.
and yeah, okay, for some that might work, but it's a pretty coarse way
Yeah.
of approaching things, and ultimately it's kind of it's another cul-de-sac, because like I said when you asked me before about the, when we were talking about that trap, you can get caught in these traps. You can
Yeah.
get caught in this. There's everything and there's nothing, and then both are cul-de-sacs. Um, there's a poem that I have on my website on the little page about me. There's a little bit which is a really tiny little bit about me, but there's another the rest of the well about the character of David.
Yeah. Yeah. The character.
And then there's I put a poem in there which is by one of my favorite Zen poets, Rugg, who's a Japanese Zen poet. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's a line in there where he says, you know, whether you talk about everything or talk about nothing, or even talk of the middle way, just leaves you stuck. So because you can't really put anything into words, and it's like there's a quote by the famous Indian sage Nisargadatta, who says, like, whether you say everything exists or nothing exists, whichever you like, just stop complaining about
I love that.
it. So, but neither are correct, because you can't say anything about it,
Yeah, you can't.
Um, no, and so going down this whole wrecking ball of nothing, nothing, nothing is also a cul-de-sac, which you can get stuck in. So yeah, I don't subscribe to anything really.
Yeah,
Like,
because I mean, and that's why I like to put a disclaimer out to people when they're listening to this. This what we're talking about is very ordinary. It's what's like you said. It's what's always been happening. It's just
yeah,
a case of mistaken identity, and just all it is, just a clear seeing through it. So it's
yeah,
not like an experience. It's not like you're once you see this, you're blissed out or anything. It's ordinary. It's accessible to everyone, and there's nobody better than anyone else. There's no teacher. Like you don't need like an outside teacher to tell you this. Like if you just look inside at your own intuition, at your direct experience,
yeah.
you can see this for yourself. So this isn't, there's equality here with self-realization. There's no hierarchy, and it is accessible to everyone because it's what you already are already.
Yeah, and that's why people get stuck in the seeking, because they look to these lofty teachers and they think, oh, that they must be so much better than me, and this is accessible to them and not to me, and
Yeah.
and that kind of and that's why people get stuck in that. Um, but yeah, no, as you say, it's something that's accessible to everybody. You don't have to live in an ashram or live in a cave for 20 years. You know, you can
Or go to India and be at satsang? Do you have to do that? Is that the only way?
say it again.
Do you have to go to India and sit in satsang and sit at my feet? What do you
Yeah,
think?
yeah,
No, no, do you have to do?
spend lots of money doing yoga postures and all that
Yeah.
kind of thing. I mean, that might be
No.
suitable for some. I'm not saying
No,
that
there's
that's
everything's included. I'm not knocking
yeah,
anything. I'm just, but I just
yeah.
want people to see that it doesn't have to be that way either. It could just be
No,
because it's already what's ordinarily here anyway. It's just
yeah,
that they've
that's
had a
right.
case of mistaken identity and they've gotten off track with
Yeah.
that. That's all.
Yeah, we can really save people a lot of money on airline fees and travel expenses, for for
That's
just
funny you
plain
say money because I had saw one of your articles was something about should I charge or something about money. It was something recently you posted about that. Maybe say something about that.
yeah, somebody asked me like I think this is a thing maybe more common in the East where there's a lot of money exchange in terms of spirituality, donating to temples, becoming a member of temples. I suppose, well, in the West as well, become a member of a church and all that kind of stuff, donating to the church and stuff. I
Yeah.
suppose it's everywhere really. But yeah, no, somebody asked me like, if you're spiritual or whatever, should you charge for your time or should you just give everything for free because it's all happening effortlessly like that. and, and I was like, well, again, I don't like to give definitive answers to these things because it's a subjective thing. You have to
Yeah.
just feel it for
Feel it,
yourself.
right. Your
So
intuition. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And so long as we're remaining as effortless being, we're in tune with our intuition, and that will be the guiding light. It's far deeper and more accurate than any kind of thought pattern. Um, And so, yeah, I think my answer was just sort of find out for yourself, more or less. But yeah, I mean, I've tried different things. I tried not charging, and I found not charging was a little dangerous because you do tend to attract a lot of people who you would prefer maybe not to be having conversations with,
And
who
they might
want.
not take it seriously either. They might be,
No, that's what I mean. So
yeah.
you get people who are not taking it seriously.
Yeah.
Whereas I find, in my case, I find if there's a little crossing the palm of silver to a certain degree. Then that it's kind of like an energy exchange. Like there's
Agree.
been an exchange of energy, there's been a reciprocation, and so we can then join together, and the person on the other side on the screen is listening and eager to hear what you say and be involved in that conversation. So in my case, I found that charging helps. Some people
I
just like
agree.
to
I
information.
do the
So
same. Yeah, I do the
so
same
yeah,
thing.
it just seems to work. It just sets a sort of precedent, and then you sort of filter out a lot of people that would perhaps just want to come up and debate with you or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean by that. Oh, that's great. So is there anything that you wanted to express? Like on this channel, there's like a lot of people that are seeking, or maybe there's some that are self-realized and they're just looking to integrate it into their everyday life. Is there anything come through for you that you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the integration will continue for as long as you believe it to be, as long as you take that seriously, it will continue. Basically, everything is just going on by itself. Everything is naturally unfolding, and even the epiphany of the recognition of your true nature is not necessarily the end of the road in some way. There's still an unfolding and a expressing and a refining that continues to go on, which is a beautiful part of just being human.
Mhm.
And the worst thing you can do is get in the way of it.
Mhm.
But,
Yeah, right.
so,
Yeah.
um, so it just comes back to this constantly, whatever is going on, um, just notice the peace, the stillness within yourself. Come back to that always and just allow whatever is coming up to be, whatever is there to be. Because whatever comes up, say you're
Mhm.
still seeking, to say that you're still seeking means that you're still suffering. And you're still suffering because you're still resisting life. And so whatever comes up, that the key is just to notice it and accept it without any judgment. Because any kind of resistance, any kind of I don't like this or I don't want this,
Hmm.
that is suffering. That's all
That's
suffering. That is just that amount is suffering. The mind is engaged, thinking is engaged. I don't like this. I don't want this situation. And there's the thought, which becomes the energy and the reaction in the physical body. And that is suffering itself in that little closed capsule of suffering. I know David Bingham talks a little bit about this as well, but the thought, the emotion, and the physical reaction, it's just a kind of closed loop.
hmm
And so as soon as you keep engaging mind, you just keep going into this closed loop, you know. Um, and that's where suffering exists. In effortless being, there's no suffering.
Right.
In just remaining as effortless being, just noticing what is going on without any kind of engagement in it, there's no suffering in that.
Right.
So, so that goes for those who are seeking and those who are integrating. That it's the same thing. Like stuff comes up in life, allow it to come up. If you're integrating, stuff will come up that you've tried to hide or ignore for years. Let it come up, see it. If you engage in it, then you jump on that, you know, merry-go-round and off you go again, you know, and you end up in this little cycle of suffering. The difference is, though, that it's easier once you've recognized your true nature. It starts to become easier to notice when you jump on that merry-go-round,
Yes.
and you can say, "Oh, no, I've done that again," and you can immediately back out of it. Um,
Yeah, what's
when
seen here is like when the thoughts come up or the emotions, it's almost like now they're not like as personal to me. Like previous to this, I would say,
yeah,
oh, that applies to Rob. Now it's just like they're just, these thoughts and emotions are just coming up into this infinite space of beingness,
yeah,
effortlessly coming up equally. Everything's just arising in this infinite space of beingness. And the thoughts will come and the emotions will come, but it's not like it's like they're allowed to be here. Everything's allowed to be here, and they're not personal anymore. Does that make any sense? Like,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, by the time you've decided it's allowed or not allowed, it's already happened anyway.
yeah, the mind comes in
So,
after the fact, like it's late to the
yeah.
party, so to speak. Yeah,
Well, that's right. That's right. I love that. I think
yeah,
Luciana said that to me once. I
yeah,
thought it was late to the party. I was like,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
And I mean, it's the analogy of the commentator. I think maybe David uses this as well. But
yeah,
if you're watching the football game, you know, like the game's going on, and the commentator comments after the fact,
yeah,
you know, and
yeah.
so the commentary is always late. It's always after the event, you know. Um, so yeah, it's you know, you start to see when that the thoughts come up, and then you're able just to let them come up, and then you sort of can choose whether you want to go on that ride or not, if you like. Um, but it's all just it's all just happening in this infinite being, this infinite space, as you say, and it's allowed to. Um, and as I say, when in the moment any thought comes up to the contrary, that's already too late. It's already happened by that time. So you might as well just let it. You might as well let it be
Just
because
let it be, right? Yeah,
it already is.
yeah. It's already the case. Maybe say something about creating your own reality, or maybe reprogramming the character that's running in the movie. I don't know. Is there anything to that, or can you be intentional? What do you think?
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of this sort of manifestation stuff that you bandied around at the moment, and my response to that is, well, once you know that you're everything,
Mhm.
like why do you why do
Why do
you
you need
think
it? Why do you need to
what do you need
manifest
anymore?
anything? Yeah, what do you need to manifest, right?
Right.
Because you're already
So
whole and complete. You have everything. If
you
you're
already
saying
have
that you have to
everything.
manifest something, aren't you saying that you're in lack?
Yeah, exactly. So you're implying that you don't have it.
Yeah.
But when you recognize that you are everything, everything arises within you, then there's no desire to manifest everything. Everything's just allowed to unfold as it does within this human experience.
Like life's lifing, and there's no one here lifing it. It's just life's
Yeah.
just lifing, and life takes care of life.
Yeah. Life is living itself.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
And so all that desire, if you like, you hear a lot in
Yeah.
sort of about desire and spirituality. But that's exactly what it means. That lack of desire, just the question disappears. It becomes a moot point. You know,
That's true.
there's no need for the question at
Yeah, why
all.
have the question?
Who's asking anyway?
Yeah, yeah, who is asking? Let's take a look now. Let's, pause the thought and say, let's question who that I is that's questioning it. Who is it? Is there someone here, having that thought? Is there someone,
Yeah,
when you do that self-inquiry and you look at it, you
yeah.
can clearly see, what's happening. I want to go back to when you went back with your mom and you were living
Mhm.
there after your self-realization. Because I get a lot of questions like this with people like,
Mhm.
Rob, I just, I realize my true nature and stuff, but then their interactions with family and friends, sometimes like they don't understand them or something like this. Like, how did that go? Like when you were with mom, like when with all of this, did you talk to her about this, or did she say anything like, David, you look a little different here, or like how did all that family dynamics play out, like like that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's impossible to hide that there's
Yeah,
been a change.
yeah,
However, what has changed, why it changed, how it changed, is really difficult to explain unless somebody is really open to that. Um, so, and there's really no need to kind of that wanting to explain stuff. It's just part of this desire to be special and different,
right,
like,
yeah, yeah, it's true.
um, you know. Um, So yeah, I'm not saying it wasn't, tricky to navigate, but
Yeah.
that was more a case of it's always down to you.
Mhm.
It's always down to the way you are. Like if I, in my job, for example, if I go into supporting somebody who has schizophrenia and I've got this expectation of how I want that support to go, and we're going to do X, Y, we're going to go into town, we're going to have a coffee, we're going to buy a new pair of sneakers, and we're going to get the bus back. And that's my expectation of it. And then I go and I realize that he hasn't cleaned his flat for a week. He hasn't cleaned his toilet. He hasn't taken the rubbish bags out.
Mhm.
And then let's say I start getting frustrated. Is that his fault or my fault?
Mhm.
It's all on me.
Right.
It's my approach. I went in there with expectation of how it should be, rather than just going in there open
Open. Yeah.
and seeing and
Mhm.
seeing how it is and dealing with it as it is. So it always comes down to that expectation. So dealing with family members in that situation is no different, because you go in and then, in the beginning, certainly, you want them to understand you and all the rest of it. And it's really not necessary. Everybody is on their own journeys.
Mhm.
And whether they understand you or not really doesn't matter. Let's say your mom doesn't understand you, and then one day she understands you. Okay,
Yeah.
so what?
Yeah. Right.
Well, she understands me now. Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Now what we're gonna have for lunch. Like,
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's like no big deal. Yeah.
it's like so.
Ordinary. It's ordinary. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So there's that sort of expectation that comes into it, but that's all on you, and that's part of your integration, if you like. That's the
Mhm.
part of the work that comes from you.
Right.
And it's on you. So you always have to just go into these things just open, resting as effortless, being with no expectation about how things should go, how people should react, and completely present. Um, because any time you try to put an expectation on how things should be now, because there's been this change, and so everything should be different, like you're just going to cause trouble and friction. And
Right.
so, and as regards so that's all on you, the way you approach it. But as regards the other family members, they're on their journey, and they have their own conditioning, their own subconscious patterns, which will act out and play out. You know,
Mhm.
um, my mom doesn't have a clue what happened.
Yeah.
To to she doesn't know what or non-duality or even my spiritual journey. I really kept secret for 15 years. I really didn't tell
Oh,
anybody. In fact, the first person I ever told the entire story to was David Bingham.
wow.
Um, so a couple of months after um, self-realization, I had to chat with David online, and that was
Yeah.
the first time I ever told anybody about
Yeah.
15 years worth of journey. So my family had no clue.
Well,
So suddenly I came back from Japan, like it was totally, sort of acting differently, behaving differently, or just appearing slightly calmer. And
yeah.
and they really didn't know. And and so they didn't know what was going on, but because they're family and they love you and they try to understand as best they
Of course.
can. And you can see that they're trying. And especially with my sister, she's really, really tried hard to kind of to understand as much as she can what has
Yeah.
been going on. And when you see that and you recognize that, and you can also see that they're still playing off their own subconscious patterns and conditioning, there's there's just compassion that comes out in there. You can just only be compassionate, um, and just allow the situation to go whichever way it goes.
Mhm.
And also, though, you may find, and this happened with me, that you may find that you need to be a little bit stricter with boundaries in your relationships. This is
Love that.
something,
Yeah, I love when you bring up boundaries. Yeah, say more about that.
yeah, so this is something that I struggled with for a really, really long time because I was always, like many, I was always a people pleaser.
Yep.
Um, Always trying to do best for other people to gain their approval, and
Hmm.
a lot of that stuff goes right back to your childhood, right back to
Hmm.
3, 4 years old. And this is why it's interesting for me now working in mental health, because it's very much a two-way street. When you're working with people that have severe trauma, um, you also notice the trauma within yourself, things that have happened within yourself, patterns
Yes,
within
so
yourself.
true. Yeah.
And so it's that's why I say it's rewarding. It's rewarding because you're helping them, but also they're helping you. This
Hmm.
therapeutic relationship. We're all in this soup together. It's
Yeah.
not it's not like everybody's in this big sort of cosmic soup together. So it's kind of it's two way. But yeah, so if you've ever had sort of people pleasing tendencies or sort of relationships with family members that have been strained or difficult over the years, um, you may find that you need to just put clear boundaries in place to protect yourself because you'll find that if you don't, you'll get drained very, very quickly.
Hmm.
And I found that I had to really um, be very careful how much time I spend with particular family members, say. Um, that doesn't mean I don't want to see them, but I go and spend like just enough time,
Yeah.
not too much, and then I'm not afraid to just say, "Oh, you know what? I'll
Time to go.
see you
Yeah.
next week,"
Hmm.
and go. And so you can put boundaries in place by doing that, maybe limiting the amount of times you go to see the person or um, how you contact the person. You might want, instead of making a phone call, make a text or whatever. But you do need to sort of protect yourself. That's very, very important. Otherwise, you just will end up burned out,
Hmm.
drained, what they call compassion fatigue.
I love that term.
And
It's so true.
so,
And a lot of people listening to this are going to be able to relate to that, because a lot of
yeah,
people can.
and I tell you another thing about boundaries is that if you get a lot of kickback, if you put a
Yeah.
boundary in place and you get a lot of kickback,
Yeah.
that's exactly why you need a boundary with that person.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah.
Because the people that say, "Oh, you know what, David? Yeah, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
shouldn't have said that," or "Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I'll see you again next week." Those type of people where it's all chill and cool, you don't really need boundaries with.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Ones,
Right.
yeah, but the ones that give you when you try to put a boundary in place, like, I'm not going to come and see you once a week, I'm going to see you once a month or whatever it is, and you get pushback from that.
Hmm.
That's exactly why the boundary
That's
needs to
why you
be.
needed that boundary. Yeah.
That's why you needed that boundary. And it may be tricky, but in the moment, but it's really, really necessary to do that.
So
And
glad you brought that up. That's awesome.
yeah. And just learning to be yourself, be authentically you, which means not just saying yes all the time, sometimes saying no, being
Yeah.
braver and
It's okay to say no. Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. Again, a lot of people think that being spiritual is all giving and all,
Yeah. Like
floating
you saying, give
around.
everything for free,
Everything for
give
free,
everything.
but and it's not like that at all. It's not
Nope.
like no, if you're like that, then you will be burned out very, very quickly, and you'll be no use to man or beast, as my granddad used to say.
So true. Well, let's end with love. Say something about love. Maybe we'll end with that. Love. What comes to you when I say love?
It's just the scent of the universe, isn't it? It's the scent
Mm.
of the flower. Um, That's love is something that you don't have to try to give.
Mm,
Love is like when you open the windows and it just floods in by itself,
love that.
It's that light is there. You don't need to do anything. Um, and the more you try to love, the more you try to have others love you, the more you push it away. Whereas if you're just remaining as your true self, love is a an aspect of your true nature. It's the scent of the flower that you are in your essence. So that is remaining as your true nature. That scent is given off naturally out into the world. And that's why it's called unconditional love. It's not dependent on anything else. Um, so in order to attract love, in order to love, you just need to really be yourself.
Love that.
Remain as yourself.
Love that. That's beautiful how you express that. Very clear. So, is there anything else you wanted to express? Any last things that's coming up for you that you wanted to say? Or
I can't think so. I think we've covered quite a lot.
did we? Yeah.
Yeah.
Flow naturally. It's just whatever comes
Yeah.
out,
I love it. Yeah.
effortlessly, like effortless being.
Yeah.
Speaking of
I love it
effortless,
when it's like this, when it's just
we're just talking, right? Yeah.
just talking. It's much
Spontaneous, just like
yeah,
natural.
yeah. Absolutely.
Keep it real,
Absolutely.
yeah. Keep it real, so to speak. So speaking of effortless being, I maybe just tell the audience like if something resonates and they want to get in contact with you and what you do, how you support people and how they can contact you, that kind of thing. Maybe say something about, what you're doing, your programs, your website, anything that comes to you right now.
Yeah, so I started a website about coming up to 4 years ago now. It's effortlessbeing.org.
Yeah.
And I just started it with a little bit of information about me and things like that, and some blog posts and whatnot. But it's kind of expanded over the last 4 years now to include some videos from my YouTube channel, blog posts, and people can also book online if they'd like to talk through anything with me. They can book a session. So if you go onto effortlessbeing.org, you'll see some information and my booking page. You can go on. You can just see when I'm free. So I basically keep it like an open door for anybody that wants to contact me. Basically, anytime when I'm not working at my full-time job, when
Yeah.
I've got days off or I've got time after work, like I just keep those periods open and free. And so that's the slots that people can book sessions with me. So if you go on the website, just have a tool around, look at some of the stuff, and if they feel like booking a session, you can do so.
That's great. I encourage people to do that. You're very clear, David. I can tell your love. You're very authentic, and you've been a big support, for me throughout the years. So appreciate our friendship.
Likewise,
And
it's been absolutely, it's been amazing to be in touch with you for
it's really
first
cool.
first effortless contact of my life.
Yes, effortlessly. It all just comes by effortlessly. It's all been doing it that anyway. It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
really nice. Well, what's next for you? Anything planned coming up? Anything, coming or
I'm going to have a wee conversation with Brian O'Connor
okay.
on Monday, so I'll make a little video for my YouTube channel. Um, I have somebody booked a session tonight, so I'll meet them, have a chat.
Nice.
I'm on annual leave at the moment from my full-time job, which is great until next Tuesday. So apart from those two things and this, I'm just kind of chilling on the sofa, going for walks in nature and just
I love that.
effortlessly wandering around the earth until Tuesday when I go back to work.
That's so great. All right, David. Nice chatting with you. We'll end the interview
Okay.
there. Thank you, David. Much
All
love
right.
to you,
You take
brother.
care. Thanks. Cheers.